Started, I have prepared some slides so that we can have like some sort of structure to the talk, but I want this to be like very informal. Uh, Before we begin, are we recording? Okay, so I'll start. Okay. So yeah, as I was saying, I prepared some slides because I wanted to have some structure to this talk, but I want this to be very informal. So please feel free to like ask any questions if you guys if you have feel free to like just stop me in the bit in the middle and like ask any questions. So yeah, I think as Ansari said, the I think we want to talk about PhD in USA and like the journey that I had and like some of the lessons I learned in this journey and like in general like what the process is like, what are the challenges and what are like the rewards essentially of this process. So before we begin, I want to give like a quick introduction. I graduated from IIT Madras in 2017. I was in engineering design department. I did my dual degree, so I got my BTech and MTech from ED. My DDP was on planning and control of autonomous ground vehicles. I did some work in planning and control towards the robotic side, I guess. I was also the basketball captain in my last year, so I represented IIT Madras for the inter-IIT tournament. Some of my fondest memories of INSTI are around basketball, and I greatly miss INSTI. I hope to go back someday. I've seen that much of the campus has changed since 2017, so I'm very curious what it feels like now. So yeah, graduated from IIT Madras in 2017. After that, I went to Georgia Tech in Atlanta, USA, for my PhD. I started my PhD in robotics. My research area was intelligent exploration for motion planning. Again, in the robotics AI side, uh, essentially, like I'll talk a bit about my research, but yeah, it was 5 years of a roller coaster ride. So I graduated in 2022, which is like last year summer. So I did 5 years of PhD from 2017 to 2022. So yeah, I just wanted to give like a couple of slides about my research in case anyone is interested. We can talk more offline about it. But my PhD research was on how to propose a family of exploration algorithms for motion planning using different sources of information. So essentially, how do you intelligently explore the search space so that you could go from something like this to this to this, and essentially get faster and faster motion planning algorithms. Then I applied these algorithms for motion planning of robots, such as this manipulator, single arm robot, dual arm robots. I developed a race car robot in my lab, trying to like plan and take the robot from point A to point B. So it was a very interesting research topic at the intersection of AI, optimal control, and machine learning. I have gave a link to my Google Scholar in case anyone's interested, and of course, I'm very much happy to talk about it offline. Uh, and I'm currently at Aurora Innovation. Aurora Innovation is a company that is trying to develop self-driving cars and trucks. It is a leader in self-driving technology here in USA. They have a lot of interest from companies like Toyota and many of the Volvo, who all want to develop like self-driving vehicles. I work in the motion planning department again, similar to my research. I am in the trajectory generation team. I'm trying to like essentially implement algorithms to generate trajectories for these self-driving cars in scalable manner. So my current job is a great blend of research and software development work. So that's a little bit about me. But that's the topic of today is how did I get here and how did aspirants who are trying to pursue grad school follow the same process. So here's a quick outline of the talk. I wanted to like discuss some of these topics with you, all of you. So the first thing is first question we would want to discuss is why even go for grad school. The second is if you've decided you want to go for a grad school, what is the application process like? Once you get accepted, how do you best settle into the grad school? Then we'll talk about what a journey of a PhD student is like. How do you choose a research topic? What are pros and cons of PhD? What is life after PhD? And then we'll have some time for questions. So before I begin, any quick comments, questions? All right. I hope everyone can hear me. I can't see people's faces, so I'll just keep continuing. All right. So yeah, the first question would be like, why would anyone want to go to grad school at all? Why apply for graduate schools? Why do MS or PhD? And the answer is very personal, but some of the reasons might be that you want to work in core jobs, you like research, and you want to have a technology-based career. Like you don't want to do what we used to call in NCT as non-core jobs. You don't want to go into like consultancy. You don't want to go into marketing. Maybe right now, you want to work in core areas, you want to do research. So that's one of the big reasons why a lot of people go to grad school. The second thing is like you get a lot of exposure. You get to learn from the best in the world. Some of the professors in the grad school are like the best in the fields. Uh, the third reason might be that there are frankly inadequate job postings in your field. Back in India. So when I was graduating in 2017, I wanted to do research, and I also remember not finding some of the jobs in robotics that I was interested in at that point. So, for these two reasons, I personally decided to apply for grad school. And the fourth thing might be you get to, like explore beautiful campuses that many of these universities have. They also have challenging coursework, and you make great memories throughout the grad school. So let's say once you've decided for you want to like go for grad school, the next question might be if you want to do a MS or a PhD. And we can spend a lot of time on this. If you want to do MS or PhD, there are pros and cons of both. Uh, the briefest thing I can say is that MS is a sprint while PhD is a marathon. As I said, pros and cons of both. We can, if anyone has any like particular question, I'll be happy to answer that later. But one thing to note is that masters is usually not funded. Uh, you can graduate in 1 or 2 years, get a job and start working, but you will not usually be funded. You can try and find a graduate research assistantship or a teaching assistantship, usually called GRA or GTA, from your second semester, but for the first semester for master students is usually not funded. On the split side, PhDs are usually fully funded. You will hardly spend anything out of your pocket for your entire duration of the PhD, but it is a commitment for 5 and 6 years. And we'll talk more about this, but you're going to have your research assistantship or teaching assistantship duties along with academics and research. So you're going to have to like balance everything. So yeah, pros and cons of MS and PhD. Yeah, but something to think about. All right. So let's say that you have decided for that you want to go for grad school, and you want to like you also decided, okay, I'm gonna go for MS or PhD. You're very clear on that. Maybe you're not clear on that. You want to apply for both. You want to apply for MS in one university and PhD in another university. So next. The next question comes is that how do you like start preparing for the grad school application? And that has different components, a lot of different moving parts, a lot of different components. And I think I've listed out all of them that I feel are important here. The first thing is GRE and TOEFL. So that's something that every, I think, graduate applicant has to go through. I personally found it kind of annoying, but it is what it is. So you have to like go through that process. So for GRE and TOEFL, in my opinion, the way it works is that a good score is necessary, but not a sufficient condition for a successful application. What I mean by that is that they usually use GRE and TOEFL as a rejection criteria, in the sense that if you don't have good GRE scores, they will most likely reject your application. But if you have good GRE scores, that does not mean they're gonna like accept your application. So essentially, it becomes a rejection criteria. So the next thing is your CGPA or grade pointer. This is very important because it is a direct reflection of your academic performance. I think it is important for MS and PhD respective. It's good to have a decent CGPA on your resume. The third thing is letter of recommendation. Again, it is important. It is important that you get personalized letters of recommendation. They should not be very generic. Those generic letter of recommendations don't carry weight. The fourth thing is, and we'll talk more about this, is statement of purpose or SOPs. I don't know if they are known by any other name, but these are extremely crucial. They make or break your application, and it is your chance to like describe your passions and your resume and essentially market yourself. The fifth thing is like, especially for PhD, you need it is good to have research papers on your resume. They may not be like published in like the top journals or something, but as long as you have demonstrated some research capability, that's a good sign. And the last thing is internships. These are great as well to have on your resume. It shows real work experience. It is important for MS and PhD. So one thing to note is that I get asked this question many times that, like, what if I don't have a 9-point CGPA? Will I not, should I not consider grad school applications at all? What I would say is that it is usually not that straightforward. It is a combination of a lot of factors, in the sense that if you don't have a 9-point CGPA, if you do have, let's say, a 9-point CGPA, that does not automatically mean that you will get accept from all the universities. At the same time, if you don't have a 9-point CGPA, but you demonstrate, especially in your statement of purpose or SOP, that you have other qualities, or like you have other things on your resume that can outweigh your, let's say, average CGPA, that is great as well. So there is no one thing that can make or break an application, but it's a combination of a lot of factors. Any questions?
Have you done internship before applying PhD?
Yes. So when I was at IIT-Madras, I did, I would say, 2 internships. I did a company internship in Caterpillar. So engineering design, fortunately, has in their curriculum a 6 months internship. So it's a compulsory internship that we all had to do. So I did a 6 months internship in an industry. I also was fortunate enough to get the DART scholarship. So I ended up going to Germany for a research internship. So I had 2 internships when I was applying for grad school.
Is GRE compulsory for the application of PhD, like even after COVID? Because
That is a good question. I want to say yes, but I might be wrong because I am frankly outdated in this aspect. But in general, for PhD, it doesn't matter. You have to give GRE TOEFL. Every grad school applicant has to give it.
okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello, Sagar. I joined a bit late.
Okay.
Just wish to know if you are also going to discuss about post PhD, I mean postdoctoral opportunities.
So I don't have anything in particular. Like I don't have a slide on that on postdocs, but I do have like
Okay.
some experience. I have like met postdocs here, so I'll be
Okay.
happy to answer any like questions you have on that.
Yeah, sure. Because I mean, it depends on majority of the people what they want here. So I don't
Yeah. No, I
just.
mean, feel free to ask me any questions. I have a lot of like postdoc friends, so I can tell you their experiences in like whatever way I can.
Okay. Mostly, I mean, because right now I was wondering to how should we approach the supervisors in
Okay.
our specific area? If because I am looking forward for to apply via this Nehru Fulbright.
Okay.
So, how different it is for the PDFs than the.
Okay, so how about like can you, if you can hold on for like some slides? I have like a couple of
Sure.
things or pointers on that.
Okay.
We can talk more like towards the end of my presentation if I haven't answered your
Yeah.
question. Yeah,
Okay. That would be fine. Yeah.
cool.
Thank you.
Cool. So I think let me go forward with my presentation. So essentially, like these are the different components of the grad school application. Um, it's a combination of all these factors, and all of these are important. But one single does not like make or break your application. So I wanted to like spend some time talking about statement of purpose or SOPs, because I think they are some like one of the most important parts of your application. And secondly, they are the malleable, what I would call malleable part of your application. When you're applying for a grad school, the other aspects that I mentioned on this slide would be most probably fixed. Your CGPA is not going to change. The letter of recommendations are usually not in your hand, like it's whatever the professors give you. You will most probably may or may not like cannot like churn out a new research paper. You cannot like do a new internship. So SOPs are the only thing that you have in your hand that can change when you're trying to apply for a grad school. So it is the malleable part of your application. It is an important part of your application. So what is an SOP? What I would, it's essentially like a two-page pager describing you, your journey, your passions and goals in life. And in my opinion, it should include the following. It should include something about your past, which is your academic background, your projects, conferences, internships, the courses that you liked, and how they shape your interest, how they have prepared a solid groundwork for your grad life. Essentially, how has your past prepared you for your graduate school? The next thing it should have is your present, which is like now that you have acquired the skills, why are you choosing this particular university program that you're applying to? How are you a good fit for it? And are you interested in particular profs in that university? Is there a research area that you are interested in? So essentially, why are you applying for this grad school program? And lastly, it should also include something about your future, which is that after you graduate from the program that you're applying to, what do you intend to do? And how will this program prepare you for it? So essentially your past, your present, and your future. And note that I would highly recommend that you write a unique SOP for each university. You should mention the labs, research programs. You should mention professors that you're applying for, and make it tailored and unique for each university. And you should do a lot of iterations. You should have the first draft and the second draft, and like send it out to seniors and like folks in your area. Let them give you some suggestions on that. Look at how they have written SOPs. Do a lot of iterations. And some of the general thoughts, we talked a bit about SOPs, but also make sure that you choose your letter of recommendations or the professors that give you letter of recommendations carefully as well. As I said, the letter of recommendations need to be personalized and tailored for you. Make sure that the letter of recommendation says something about the project that you worked on and what kind of student you are, and things like that. Secondly, note that application process is long and time-consuming process. So pace yourself and take some time off, relax sometimes. Thirdly, help each other. It is great to have, a connection of people, and I'm great that talks like these are organized so that, like it's essentially about helping each other, so that everyone succeeds in the end. A lot of times people have this question. For example, I'm applying to this university, but I don't know if I'm good enough for that university. That is a very natural question to have, and I think one of the ways for you to answer it yourself is that um, you can talk to the seniors in that area. You can talk to the seniors who have already um, gotten acceptance from, let's say, this grad school. You can look at their applications. You can look at their resumes, their profiles, and see, what the threshold might be, and then you can calibrate based on that. The last thing I would say is that, just as a general thought, is that be optimally ambitious. Do not, in my opinion, don't try to apply for only the top universities and the top programs. Just as Stanford, like CMU, Princeton, Cornell. It might be prudent to like have some of the apply for also some safe universities. Some of the programs you think that you have much better chance of getting in. So be optimally ambitious and also have safe universities when you apply for grad school programs. Any questions before I go ahead on this? All right. Let me go ahead. So let's say that you now have applied. You've sent out applications, and you're waiting for like acceptance or rejection emails from them. So what happens is that essentially, as I understand, a graduate committee reads your application. If it passes a certain threshold, it is sent to, if you're applying for PhD, it is sent to potential advisors or professors uh, who have a opening in their lab, or who have a funding in their lab. And if you are selected by that advisor or professor, you will usually have an interview to see if everyone is on the same page. So PhD students usually have an interview with a potential advisor if they're selected. And when we are having this interview, I think it is very important for the potential PhD students to see or gauge how their advisor might be, how the professor might be. I think choosing your advisor is extremely crucial. I cannot stress this enough. If you're applying for PhD, be very careful, or like choose your advisor carefully, because that will shape your life for at least next 5-6 years. So one of the ways to do that, one of the ways to like see how the compatibility with your professor might be, is to like talk to the PhD students in the lab. Be sure to check if there is funding and the right project for you in that lab. Check what are the expectations for graduation with that professor. Does the professor want you to publish 4 papers or 5 papers or like 10 papers or like 100 papers, general papers? It is good to know what are the expectations of the professor, because that may not be consistent across. In my opinion, it is not necessary that, as I said, like we should be optimally ambitious. It is not necessary to go for the most famous celebrity professors in your area, because note that earlier career professor might have more time for you, but a celebrity professor might have like secure funding for your PhD. So there are pros and cons of both, having a very established professor and having an early career professor as your advisor. So just it is case by case basis. You have to weigh the pros and cons. But again, to stress this, choose your PhD advisor carefully. All right, so let's go to the next part. You have gotten the acceptance, and you have been selected for the PhD. You have accepted the PhD position, and you want to start the grad life. You want to start the graduate school life. So some of the thoughts for that, just like settling into grad school, is that Indian students usually end up sharing rooms or apartments in the first semester. So be sure to like choose compatible roommates. First semester in grad school, there is a lot happening with respect to your curriculum, trying to like settle into a new country. The last thing you want is, like frictions with your roommates. So it is good to like choose compatible roommates. Um, then the next thing is that you should pace yourself for a step function, what I call a step function in the course curriculum. Note that the grad courses here in the universities take up a lot of effort. Even a single course, like you have to work extremely hard. There's a lot of homeworks, one after the another, and these homeworks take up a lot of like effort. You have quizzes and like exams and everything. So grad courses usually take up a lot of effort. And if you're a PhD student, you have to manage that coursework with the research ramp up in your lab. You have to read a lot of papers, and you also have to manage GRA and GTA duties along with that. So coursework, research ramp up, and GRA GTA duties, your life is going to be very packed in the first semester. And it is felt more because we are not used to it. So that is why I call it a step function. So it is all about like settling into this new normal of grad school. So it is also important, like while you're like while you're trying to like pace yourself, you should maintain good health, diet and sleep. And it is extremely crucial, I would say, as a PhD student to form good friendships and social connections. That is something that is very that people don't talk about, or like they don't understand how important this is. But note that if you're a PhD student, you're going to be you're going to be in the university for like 5 years, and having good social connection and social bonds and friendships is extremely crucial for your mental health. It is extremely crucial to have that sort of support. So uh, it is important that you form good friendships in your first year, and throughout your journey, of course. But yeah, in first year as well. So yeah, that is how this is all about, like settling into grad life. Before we go ahead, any questions again? It gives me like a time to like have some water.
So, hi Sagar.
Mhm.
So talking about choosing a professor. So, what if our professor is a Chinese? Will it affect our?
I would say no. I would say it doesn't matter like the nationality of the professor. What I think would matter more is what is the expectations um, of that professor. Essentially, like as I said, like what is the expectations of the professor for a PhD student to graduate? So different professors might like have different standards. Like that is more important to like essentially like gauge um, when you have that interview. Yeah.
Okay, fine. And like the stipend which we receive from the professor,
Mm-hmm.
uh, is it enough to sustain life in US?
Yeah, that is a good question. Yes, you will live a comfortable life in US, in the sense that that will take care of your rent, and you will have enough to like like spend for groceries, other things. What might be difficult is that, let's say like you want to buy a car, and you want to like, with car comes the car insurance and like things like that. So having a car is difficult, but if you get a house close enough to the campus and you have like the campus shuttle and you walk everywhere or take a cab, um, then like the stipend is pretty sustainable. It's very comfortable. You won't have any problems.
Sagar Joshi.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
What is the average stipend
or usually for a MS or PhD?
So it depends on the on the on the on the location, because like for example, East Coast universities are usually like the cost of living on the East Coast of USA is like much lesser than the West Coast. So let's say like Stanford would have stipend around, let's say, like $3,000 per month. Whereas East Coast University like Georgia Tech, we had $2,400 per month.
Okay, thank you.
Is the coursework compulsory? Like in India, during PhD first year, they do their coursework and then they start their research from second year. Is it the same in US also?
Yeah, that is a good question. And the answer is yes. You have to do a certain level of credits for PhD. I think I had around like 42 credits in my PhD program. And you have to start doing the coursework from your first semester itself. So you have to, like, as I said, like first year is all about like doing the coursework, ramping up on research, and doing your GRE GTA duties. Like there is, I think in India, like you get like some time. Uh, Here you have to do it simultaneously.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there any possibility of the industry-sponsored project start after the coursework completed, so that it can get a better remuneration in terms of the stipend?
There is a possibility of industry-sponsored project, but I'm not sure how that was related to the coursework. What was your question again?
Post coursework, once the research work starts, for the better livability of the, if the industry-sponsored projects are there, then it will be having good stipend. Are these kind of arrangements are there at your place?
So two things. As I said, like the coursework and the research start simultaneously in PhDs in USA. It's not that you first do the coursework and then you start research. So here, like the coursework and research is gonna start from day one, in the first semester itself. If your professor has a industry sponsored project, and that funding or the project funding is such that you get a better stipend than, let's say, some other projects, then yes, like you might get better stipend, but it's all dependent on if your professor has a industry sponsored project.
If professor doesn't have that much collaboration with industry, but the student has that much collaboration with few industry, and few industry wanted to leverage the opportunity with that student in terms of sponsoring them, is this kind of arrangement is feasible?
It is feasible, but it is so the way it works
Do you
top
have any
down.
examples of if it
Yeah,
is being executed in
yeah.
recent?
Yeah, so essentially, but one thing to note that is it works top down, which is like your professor is gonna apply for like funding proposals, and he's gonna like end up like making like arrangements with the industry. Like if a PhD student has some like arrangements with the industry, and the industry wants to fund its PhD, and you find a professor who is okay with you getting funded from the industry, then you can, like, yes, you can, if you can reach arrangement with the professor, yes. There are a lot of cases, for example, where like NASA funds a student's PhD. So the funding comes from NASA, and the professor just acts as an advisor. But if your professor is funding you, then things might be different. So yeah, there are cases where like the industry can fund you as well. Yes.
Sir, first of all, good morning to you.
Hmm?
Sir, can you suggest some good universities for political science in USA or in UK? Or some private university also give a stipend or not?
Yeah. Private universities will give you stipend. Yes. It again depends on like if there is a funding available in the professor's lab. So it's all dependent on private or public, does not matter. It's all about like is the position funded. And the answer to the first question, I'm sorry, I have absolutely no idea. I'm not a political science person, so sorry about that.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted to know, do you have any idea of average duration of how long a PhD can span? For, how many years? Like there are some conceptions, like misconceptions, like it can last to 5 years or 10 years. Can you
Good
give some idea
question.
on that?
That is a very good question. I will talk more about that in my next slides. But it essentially comes back to whatever like I mentioned here, that it is important that you gauge the expectations from your professor for what the graduation when the graduation might be, or like what is the expectation for graduations. Like essentially PhDs can range from anywhere from like 4 years to like 7 years, or like worst cases like 10 years as well. So best case, like like you do everything in like wrap up everything in like 4 years. um Things can like go wrong, and like like I don't know, like in worst cases, like I've seen like students like do PhD for like 8 years or whatever. Yes. So as I said, like it is important for to reach expectations for graduation with your advisor. And
Sir,
note that, yeah, note that just 1 minute, like note that no professor is gonna like give you like certainty that hey, like you will graduate in like 4 years, because that is not the structure of PhD at all. Like that is not how PhD is structured. But it is good to have at least a rough idea from your professor that okay, like what are the expectations for graduation, like a rough idea, not something very concrete. Yeah, that was the question.
yes, third year when I want to ask from what time start searching for colleges to apply for MS PhD? When should I start these procedures?
I'm not sure if I heard you correctly, but the question was when should you start the procedure for MS and PhD?
Yeah, and I'm third year BTech student. So
So yeah, I think let's say like you should start your procedure 2 semesters before you graduate. So your odd semester in your last year. That is when you should start doing your GRE and TOEFL and like start preparing your application, so that you send out your applications before the deadlines. I think the deadlines, at least during my time, were something during December. December and January were the deadlines for. So you should start your procedure, like start preparing, doing like GRE and TOEFL like the summer before, like during June or something. So that you have your SOPs and everything ready by October, November. You send out your applications during December.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the case of extended PhD,
Mm-hmm.
the stipend will be guaranteed or it will be limited to 4 or 5 years?
That again is a good question, and we'll talk more about this. But it again it depends. So every project, when a professor applies for a project and gets the funding, the project has a duration. So, for example, my first project was funded by NSF, which is the National Science Foundation, and that project had funding for 3 years. So after 3 years, there are two options. The professor can reapply or like extend the project, and that can get accepted or rejected by NSF. If it gets extended, you will have like, let's say like funding for another 3 years. But it can always happen that, like you get funded for like first 3 years, and unfortunately after that, there is no funding available for any project in your professor's lab. That those cases do happen, and in those cases, unfortunately, the PhD student has to look for teaching assistantship, or apply for GRA in some other professor's lab.
But then what will happen to this I-20? Because in I-20 they mention certain period, na? Like
True. So I-20 is, I think so. So your I-20 is going to be valid. I-20 is more about the student status and your program status. So your program status is going to be like valid for like whatever 5 years. The question is, will you be funded for their entire duration? That is not guaranteed, I think, through I-20. That the what they print out on the I-20 is an estimate of like how much like funding or like how much the cost of the program might be.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, let me go ahead. We can have like more questions as I cover more topics. So so yeah, up till now, like we saw like we how we might like settle into the grad life. I want to talk a little bit more about life cycle of PhD students. Like, what does the first year look like? What does the second year look like? What does the fifth year look like? So, as I said, like the year one, it's all about ramping up on research, coursework, and settling into the grad life. Your coursework and your research is going to start simultaneously. It is not that you first do the courses, complete the coursework, then you start research. No, it will start simultaneously. You will have to do coursework along with your research. And so essentially your first year is going to be just like ramping up on research and coursework and settling into your grad life. Your second year, what you will do is like now that you have read a lot of research papers in your area, maybe you have an idea that you want to explore. You will explore that idea. You maybe start writing your first research paper by the second year. And another thing is that this many people find surprising, including me, when I first entered the PhD program. Every PhD candidate has to give qualifying exams, and these qualifying exams are essentially your candidacies for PhD. These are not these are compulsory. Every student has to give them, and these are usually written or oral or sometimes like research based. So these are essentially technical exams that every PhD student has to give. There are some special programs or like some special universities where qualifying exams for PhD students is not required. In those cases, the candidacy is based on your essentially your coursework. So if you have certain level of grades in your coursework, you are automatically qualified for PhD. You don't have to go qualifying exams. But that's very specific to courses. For example, in the electronics department in Georgia Tech, they did away the qualifying exam. So the electronics department did not have qualifying exams, but my department, the robotics department, had qualifying exams. So I had to go through the entire qualifying exam procedure. So in your second year, you're essentially like trying to write your first research paper and also preparing for qualifying exams. Qualifying exams are very important again because I think in many universities you get 2 tries at qualifying exams. If you fail the first time, you get a second try. If you fail the second time, unfortunately, they will ask you to like just do masters and graduate with masters. So this is your second year. Your third year, you have qualified, you have done your qualifying exams, you have passed. You are trying to write more research papers in your third year, and you also start drafting a PhD proposal. And in your fourth year, you organize a committee and you go through with the proposal, the PhD proposal. So the PhD proposal is essentially it's essentially saying that this is what I've done so far in my PhD. This is the research that I've done so far in my PhD, and this is what I propose to do, or this is what I promise to do in my remaining time in PhD. So that's usually your fourth year, doing the PhD proposal and like finishing up some of the research that you've started in your initial years. Your year 5, your last year hopefully, is where you do the promised work, you publish the research papers, and you write a coherent thesis with all the papers that you have. And then finally you do your PhD defense and you graduate. So yeah, essentially that is more of a ideal scenario of like year 1, year 2, year 3, 4, and 5. Things can go a little bit here and there. Like you can maybe like finish up your proposal in your like third year and graduate in your like fourth year or like 4.5 years. So it all depends. Things can get pushed ahead due to some reason, but this is generally the structure of PhD, where you like first do your qualifying exams, you write a bunch of research papers, you do a PhD proposal, and then you do a defense. So yeah, any questions on this? All right, let me go ahead then if there are no questions. Okay, so important discussion, I think, for PhD students especially is around how do you choose a research topic? How do you choose a research topic for your PhD or like for your thesis? And here are some of my thoughts on how do you choose a research topic. So firstly, you choose a research topic that has funding. We already talked about like your funding can run out. It can be for 3 years. It may exhaust. Your funding might exhaust. If you have, let's say, a topic that is funded for like your first year and does not have funding for like next year, versus you have a topic that has funding for 4 years, it is better to choose a topic that has funding for long term. And again, this is dependent on your advisor. Also, he also has a big say in like what project you work on. So the topic that you work on should be at the intersection of what you and your advisor want to work on. Many times like students develop friction where like they want to do something and your advisor wants to do something. It is important to find a middle ground in these cases. Thirdly, choose a topic that can support a thesis, so that there is no dead end after the first research paper is published. That happens many times where like the PhD student finds a topic interesting, publishes one research paper, but then there is a dead end after that. Like you cannot find anything else to do in that field or that area. So that cannot like sustain a thesis essentially. Fourth thing, I think it is extremely important, extremely important, that you choose a topic that is simple enough to be tackled during the confines of a PhD program duration. Many times students, like start working on something that is very hard, extremely hard, and they get stuck after a year or year or two. They cannot progress in that topic. They cannot find something that is publishable, propose something that is publishable, and then that starts affecting their morale and like mental health. So it is extremely important that you choose a topic where you can make small but novel contributions to the field. You don't have to solve a field. You don't have to solve, like the all the big topics or the big problems in the field during your PhD. PhD is all about making small but novel contributions, in my opinion. In my PhD, I do not claim to have solved motion planning. I have made small contributions, which are novel, but they are small and like great contributions. Yeah. Anyways, but yeah, these are my thoughts on how do you choose a research topic. Any questions on that?
Yeah, I have a doubt actually.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about the 42 credits coursework, right? So that will
Mm-hmm.
amount to how many subjects?
Could you say that again? Sorry.
That will amount to how many subjects? 42 credits in the sense. Like I'm asking, per course will take how many credits?
So one course is usually 3 credits. Yeah.
Okay.
So you have to do like around, I don't know, like at least 13, 14 courses.
Yeah, 14 courses.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is the difficulty level of the courseworks in cracking compared to in comparative to IITs?
I think it's not difficult compared to the IT coursework, but you have to put in more effort. Like it just requires more efforts. Like the homeworks are longer. Uh, the difficulty level may not be much, but the homeworks are longer. You have to write down a lot of code. It is very like implementation heavy.
Okay.
So yeah, it just takes up a lot of time.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it is not. I would say it's not like, let's say, like mathematically difficult, more difficult than like IIT coursework.
Okay. And about the exams?
Same thing, same thing. Like exams are usually like way simpler than IIT exams.
Okay.
The coursework takes up a lot of time, but the exams are pretty simple.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, Sagar.
Hi.
Like for getting into PhD, you said that there will be an interview from the university side.
Mm-hmm.
So, what questions can one expect? Like, will they be based on our past research experience, or will they be based on our future experience research? What you want to do?
It would be combination of both of the interviews taken by like your potential advisor or the professor. It would like the professor is essentially interested in like like essentially meeting you, trying to understand like what your interests are and like if there is like like some compatibility between you and him. So the professor might ask you like questions about your research, and he or she might describe professor might describe what what project you are supposed to work on, um, like what open positions there are in the lab, and it is also a chance for you to, like as I said, like ask the professor question about like the funding and expectation for graduation. It would be a very like informal like an interview. It's not about it'll be informal in the sense that there won't be any like it is not a technical interview. The professor is not going to ask you questions about like tell me about like stochastic differential equations and how you solve them. It is not about that. It is more about trying to understand where you're coming from and like what positions or like what projects there are open position for. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Let me go ahead. We're gonna have more questions later. So yeah, I think we talked a bunch about uh, like the journey of PhD and like how do you choose a research topic. Now I want to like spend some time essentially like giving my thoughts on or my opinions on like pros and cons of PhD. What are some of the good things about PhD? Some of the bad things about PhD. Essentially, like cost versus reward analysis. So let's first start with pros of PhD or like the advantages of doing a PhD. So the first thing is that you get to work on cool projects. You get to work on like cutting edge technology. If you are in like manufacturing or if you are in like electronics, you will get to like work in like state of the art labs. If you have funding for very cool projects, you get good equipment, great infrastructure. So yeah, you will enjoy your time working on these great projects. The second thing is you become an expert in your research area after PhD. During your PhD, after your PhD, you are fully aware of what is the ongoing research in that area. I know, for example, what different what are different things that are being explored in motion planning domain right now. I know different labs. I know what they're doing. What are their like strengths and weaknesses of the methods that they're pursuing. You also develop intuition for what works in your area, what methods work, what algorithms work, for example, in your area, and what does not work. Um, and you also collaborate and interact with the best people in the world, best researchers in the world. They know you, they know your work, and you know their work. So you develop a nice community of your researchers, and you can collaborate and interact with them. The third thing is that as a consequence of PhD, you stop being hand wavy about things. You become very rigorous in the way you approach the problems. PhD is all about rigor. It might be a very simple idea that you work on PhD, but you will have a rigorous analysis of that idea. When you write a research paper, you will have a rigorous implementation. So it is all about like not being hand wavy and being precise and concrete. Um, you also develop rational thinking in general as a consequence of PhD. You start thinking mathematically. You try to like pose problems in your real life as mathematical problems. You understand the constraints, like complexities of the problems, and like uh, how do you like optimize certain problems in your usual real life as a consequence of that. And the last thing, I think this is also very important, is that you get better at dealing with uncertainties in life because PhDs has exposed you to so many uncertainties in life. You get better at dealing with them after your PhD. Also, so there are also like a lot of tangible benefits, I would say, to PhD. You get to travel to a lot of conferences all over the globe to present your research. I think in IIT-Madras, I remember like you could travel to only one international conference per year or something. Like thankfully in USA, like if your paper is accepted to any conference, like they will most probably fund you to go there, so you can like travel to a lot of conferences, present your research. You will be acknowledged for your contributions uh, that you make. Um, After your PhD, you're more likely to be picked for interviews from a pool of MS students for an internship or a job. You get a higher starting salary compared to master students, and many of the research positions in industry are open only for PhDs. So the PhD students get an advantage there as well. Um, this is important for some people. You have an advantage for the visa and the green card process if you're a PhD student compared to master students, especially I think for a green card process. That's the advantage of PhD students. And after PhD, if you want to apply for tenure professor positions or research labs, PhD students have a huge advantage over master students for that as well. So these are the pros of PhD. Before I go into cons, any questions about this?
Sir, question.
That was the question?
Yeah, actually I joined late. So
Mhm.
I was wondering whether I should sit for GRE exam to get into PhD or 2024.
I had a little bit of difficulty hearing what you said, but if the question was, should you sit for GRE exams? The answer in my knowledge is yes. I think GRE exams are necessary for all graduate applicants. What I'm not sure is that if there are like any changes in the procedure after COVID, that is something that you might want to check. But as far as I know, every grad school applicant has to go through GRE and TOEFL process. All right, if there are no other questions, we can keep going ahead. Cool. So we talked about pros of PhD. Let's talk about some of the cons of PhD, some of the difficulties or like disadvantages of doing a PhD. So long story short, PhD is an extremely hard journey for a lot of reasons. The first challenge is that PhD is all about mental resilience. It is a journey alone to the top of the mountain, and you don't want to look back as you're climbing that mountain. You are expected to take the initiative, and you're responsible for your research. You alone are responsible for your research. Your advisor can only help you so much. But in the end, you are supposed to do your research and publish papers and graduate. Second thing, while you're doing that research, you realize that you're tackling some of the hard and unsolved problems. If it were so easy, someone else would have already like published a research paper on it. So the fact that you're doing research about something means that it is a hard unsolved problem. And it's gonna take some time for you to figure it out. So yeah, and as you're solving those hard unsolved problems, you have to balance coursework, you have to balance your teacher assistantship, you have to balance other duties, research duties that you might have in your lab. So there is a lot of things to do as a PhD student besides your thesis research. So it is a task balancing everything. And so that's all about mental resilience. The second thing is getting papers, research papers accepted in conferences or journals is very hard. It is hard to develop an idea that beats state-of-the-art methods. Fields quickly saturate. Uh, if anything, folks can look at the machine learning community right now. I think like the archive gets, I don't know, like how many machine learning papers per day. Any topic that becomes like hot quickly saturates, so you have to move very quickly. It is hard to develop like ideas that beat state of the art, as I said. And let us say like even if you like do that, you have a great idea and you write a great research paper, the review process to get accepted to conference is uncertain. It happens many times that like good papers get rejected and bad papers get accepted. So you just have to be, as I said, like in my first point, maintain mental resilience. That if your research is good, it will get accepted eventually in some conferences as you keep on improving your manuscript. And another thing to note is that PhD is ambiguous. Masters has a clear starting point and a clear ending point, but it is not very clear what constitutes a good PhD thesis. Um, that all depends on the quality and the quantity of your work. Do you have good quality research papers, and do you have enough good quality research papers is the question. But it is a very subjective thing, what constitutes a good PhD. It is in the end dependent on you and your advisor to reach a consensus about what constitutes a good PhD and when you can graduate. But yeah, in that sense, PhD is pretty ambiguous. The last thing that is challenging in PhD is what I would call the sunk cost fallacy, where a lot of PhD students go through this and get stuck in this problem, which is like, imagine you start working on some research idea and you spend 6 months working on that and you don't have any concrete results by the end of it. Every PhD student is faced with this question, whether like after 6 months, should I keep going or should I start a new topics from scratch? And that is a very difficult question to answer, because the light at the end of the tunnel might be next week. You might have a breakthrough next week, or it might be next year. If you have a breakthrough next week, you get a nice, good research paper, and you progress in your PhD. But who knows? It might take another year to reach a breakthrough. So this is sunk cost fallacy. It is very hard. It is very hard to like figure these things out, and you only get better at it as you progress in your PhD. So as you're trying to like wrestle with all these things, again, I would stress that in PhD, it is crucial to keep your mental and physical health intact throughout the journey. It is important that you get enough food, good food, exercise, and sleep, so that your physical and mental health is intact. Again, any questions before I go ahead? All right. So I have only a couple more slides. I don't have much to talk about other than like after this, but yeah, like let's talk about like preparing for life after PhD. So by the end of 5th year, as you're starting to like thinking about your defense and you're starting to write your thesis, you're usually faced with this question of, do you want to like move to industry, or do you want to like stay in academia? So academia is like you go for postdocs, or you like essentially try to like apply for tenured professor positions. And I think in my experience, PhD students usually are pretty clear towards the end if they want to go to industry or academia. So if you want to go to academia, you want to become a professor or like do a postdoc, especially if you want to become a professor, you need to have a superb research profile. You need to have your papers published in good journals with great amount of citations. You must have organized workshops and things like that. So first have a great research profile, and secondly, then like as a process of applying for professor positions, you have to write a vision statement, a research statement, and a diversity statement. Then, as a part of your professor application, you send out these statements to universities. If they select you, you interview with the universities, and hopefully you get a professor position, a tenured professor position. What happens after that, and like there's a lot to like unpack here. If I don't have much experience with that, but I can try and answer any questions if anyone has. So yeah, that's academia. More about industry. This is where I went. I was very clear I wanted to go to industry after PhD. So industry is slightly different from academia. Industry is more about solving what I would say real world problems than mathematical problems or like conceptual problems. Academia is more about like mathematical problems and how do you come up with theorems, whereas like industry is all about implementation. There is a lot of emphasis on having good scalable implementation, having good coding skills in my field of robotics. The interview process for industry is essentially you will have a coding round, you will have a research round, and a HR round in the end. For if you want to go to industry during your PhD, you've decided you want to go to industry, it is important that you aggressively apply for internships, research in like industry internships in your 3rd and 4th year, so that many times the internships get converted to full-time jobs later. And I think this is my last slide. I don't know if I have any other slides after this, but a little bit on like life after grad school. It is much more structured. You have weekend to yourself. You have more money to spend, which is great. But you have other uncertainties in life. Like a big uncertainty after grad school is visa, getting work visa, then applying for green card and stuff like that. But yeah, I think that is all I have. I've given my email ID and contact information, and I will take any other questions you have. Thank you.
Just one question I had. Like, I think it's an extension of the money that we get, stipend that we get. So, like, what are the total cost that you have to pay? Like, what are the investments that you do? Like paying for admission and traveling back home. Like, how are those covered, and how much is that around?
Okay, so we're talking about PhD, right? We're not talking about masters, because masters you will
Yeah.
have to like pay like the fees and like tuition fees and whatever. So PhDs, your tuition fees are all waived, so you don't pay any fees. And on top of that, you get a stipend of, let's say, in my case, around like $2,000 per month. So your major expenses are gonna be your rent, um, for your apartment, your groceries. That's gonna be like, and like whatever like small other expenses that you have. So essentially, your rent and your groceries are gonna be your like main expenses. And of course, like if you plan to travel home, back to India, that you will have to fund yourself.
Okay.
Hello, sir.
I had one doubt,
Right.
bro.
Mm-hmm.
So my doubt was that
Hello.
so while deciding for the grad school for PhD, I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to know if it is better to choose a more ranked university or better ranked university than choosing a average ranked university, but with a more active more active PhD advisor. So I mean to say that whether the activity of the PhD, the guide is more important, or whether the ranking of the grad school is more important.
Yeah,
In your
that is a good question. That's a very good question, and I would say, um, for especially for PhD, I think it is more important that you think about your advisor, your professor, rather than the university. It does not like more weightage should be given to the professor than the university, because uh, you're go- you're gonna be with your professor for the next 5 years. As I said, like um, your the expectation of what constitutes a PhD and how when you can graduate and like how many research papers is that gonna be. It all rests on the professor and not the university. um, your professor is going to support you through like your funding, deciding the research topic. So that support is extremely crucial for a PhD student. So I would say definitely give more weight on for the professor rather than the university.
okay, yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah.
Uh, Hello, sir.
Hi.
Thanks for the interesting talk. Uh, my question is just regard to master students who have done a good amount of research in their masters for this master's program. So, with regard to the master students, how does the PhD process application process look like? And then, um, since the master students would have already worked on a topic for the research, so should we consider extending it for the PhD? And also like since they also have research experience, so can we expect to get done with a PhD, let's say a little early, let's say 3 to 4 years?
Yeah, all good questions. So the first question I think was, can the master student choose the same topic, like continue working in the same topic for PhD? And I think that would be ideal. If you keep working in the same topic as your master's topic, like you worked on something during your master's, you work on the same topic in your PhD, you essentially have a head start. You don't have to like ramp up and like learn about a new topic from scratch. So that is very like preferred a lot. That'll be great. But again, like as I said, like you need to find a research topic that can be funded. Maybe your professor may not have the funding for your master's, the topic that you work during your master's. So preferred, but if it does not happen, no big deal. You can like, as long as the topic is in like similar areas, I guess it is fine. And as far as like, can masters, like because master students have like invested, let's say 2 years, can they graduate earlier in PhD? Uh, that is not a clear transition, like a thing, because again, like PhD is all about like what constitutes a PhD. It essentially like boils down to like how much work that you have done during your PhD. So your master work has no bearing. Um, if you end up doing good amount of work in let's say 4 years, you can graduate in 4 years. But it all boils down to like what is a good thesis, and that is between you and your advisor. Um, yeah,
Thank you, sir.
yeah.
That was helpful.
Yeah, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like there is some assumption like if someone is graduating from India, be it say IITs or NITs or any university, like there is some assumption like if you do PhD from abroad, the chances of getting into academia is very easy. But as you rightly pointed that PhD is all about the professor and the guide. So these two statements are contradictory. I hope you got my question.
So you mean like getting the job in academia in India if you have a PhD from abroad?
Yeah, you're right. You are right.
I know for a fact that a lot of professors in IIT, for example, have PhDs from USA. So I'm sure that helps, but I don't think it's a like a necessary condition, because I also know I had a lot of professors in ED department who had like a PhD from IISc.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is not a necessary condition, like yeah, to have a PhD from abroad.
Okay.
Hi, Sagar.
Hi.
How to select a potential advisor? Like, if I have selected my research field, and there are many grad schools working on that, and there are many professors. How to filter out the professor? Like, uh, as you were telling, funding is one criteria. If you want funding, go for the celebrity professor. And the other, if I want a professor who is going to invest time on me, how to select such professor? How can I filter them out?
Yeah, so like I think one important thing that you can do is like you can talk, as I said, to the current PhD student in his lab and try to see how the professor interacts with his current PhD students. Does he give them enough time? Like, does the professor give the students enough time? That is a good indication about like like how your relationship might be with the professor. Next thing is like you can, like, when you have the interview with the professor, or if you have when you have a video call, you can like straight up ask the professor that will you be able to like give me enough time, like what sort of like how many like can we have a meeting, and how will you like support me like in this journey, what are like the expectations that you might have with respect to that, like how independent should I be during my PhD. So that all depends, because I know for a fact that a lot of like well established professors, because they are so busy with a lot of different things, they may not have so much time for all the PhD students. So they expect like the PhD students to like essentially like take the initiative, do the research themselves, and then like come up with the idea, and then like like have like a little bit of discussion. But it does not start with the professor, where like the professor will not like give you the idea to work on a research idea to work on. It has to come from the student. So yeah, it all depends on like I think yeah, you can talk to the current students
Yeah,
in the lab. Yeah.
yeah. That would be a good idea to talk to the
Yeah.
students. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Yeah, actually, I have a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
If there is a difference, like long year difference of 5 years between
Mm-hmm.
MTech and then now going for PhD, it will affect somewhere if I am applying for PhD.
Could you say the
Yeah,
question
actually,
again, please?
yeah, I have completed my MTech long back in
Mm-hmm.
2018. Now I'm
Mm-hmm.
applying for PhD in like US. So
Mm-hmm.
will it create any problem there? Will they
I
see?
I don't think so. As long as like again like as long as you write your SOP uh in a proper fashion, where like you explain why you had that, let's say, like gap in the like the academia. You can like like talk about how like the industry experience, let's say, or your job experience enriched you, or like these past years, how you've been like developing your like profile. As long as you write your SOP and like market yourself correctly, I don't think it should be a problem.
Okay, so I was interacting with some of the friends. They were saying that a professor can accept it, but the visa person can reject it because of long gap. So
I don't think so. I don't think visa has anything to do with that. I've had lab mates, research lab mates who have worked for like whatever, like 5 6 years, and then like they've come for PhD. I don't think visa would be a problem.
okay, okay, thank you. One more, one. Can I ask second question?
Sure.
So, while researching about the potential advisor, I have seen in US universities a lot of like they are in the list of faculties, but currently they are not in the US. They are either residing in the US or out of US. So, will they can become like advisor for us?
Uh, I don't know if I understood the question correctly. So, could you please repeat?
Yeah, so few professors, they are in the list of US universities. Let us take UT Austin. But when I see the current profile of that person, he is working in the China, not in the US.
Oh, I see. I see.
So,
Yeah, I mean, lot of professors, for example, go for sabbatical in the industry for a couple of years, and like they go to some other universities in China or Dubai or something like that. I think it is tricky. I think it is the safe option might be to like look for a professor uh, who is who is currently serving in that particular university, who is currently employed in that university, because you don't know what the status of the other professor might be. Is he working? Is the professor on some sabbatical? We don't know what the status is. So the safe option might be to look for professors who are, like tenured professors in that university.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Hi, I would like to ask one question. I'm from aerospace background. So I have heard that so you are not allowed to take any defense related projects, or they won't allow to defense related projects if we join PhD in US. Is it so? You have any idea about it?
Yes. So I think some projects will require like security clearance. So like by default, like international students may not be allowed. But having said that, a lot of projects in aerospace do not require like do not have any restrictions on like the visa type or something like that. So yeah, particular projects in, let's say, like weapons and like nuclear technology or something like that, yeah, might require security clearance. I was also from my home department at Georgia Tech was also aerospace, so I've seen like these cases. But there are many projects that do not require any security clearance.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Hello. So as you said, there is you have to like do a course for the PhD and you have to get 42 credits. So if like someone has joined after their masters, is there any waive in the credit?
Good question. There is some provision for transfer of credits, but it may not be like one-to-one mapping, in the sense that, let's say, like you did a 3 credit course in IIT-Madras. We don't know how much what the transfer of credits might be. A 3 credit course might be worth like 2 credit or like 1 credit for that particular university, or there may not be like any transfer of credit at all. So it depends. There is a provision, but it really like depends on the university itself.
Thanks.
Are we out of questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Like,
Sure.
can you give some list of institutes which is like provides sufficient stipend and the cost of like living is also very less. So I am asking in terms of the saving, so I can save more money and while doing PhD with reasonable university. Like so, I heard that Texas is very cheap in that way. Michigan, University of Michigan is also cost of
Sure.
living is cheap there. So,
Sure.
can you
So,
suggest me like
yeah.
this?
Yeah. So, I mean, this is a very rough rule, which is, as I said, like West Coast universities would usually have high cost of living because West Coast, essentially like Stanford and like California universities, they're going to be a bit costlier because the cost of living in California is very high. But having said that, they they calibrate your stipend based on the cost of living in that area. So if let's say like you are at University of Michigan, your because the cost of living is not very much in that area, they will calibrate your stipend based on that. So um, in general, I don't know how much savings you can do during your PhD, but you will not end up spending money out of your pocket. So you will have little bit of like savings, but I'm not sure there'll be like you can do a lot of savings in either of those in any of the university stipends.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Out of questions?
Just one basic question, like when you are doing BTech here, you have seen like people working as a PhD in your lab and all. So according to you, what's the difference between research in India and research in there?
Yeah, very like that's a very interesting question. So, I think so. I don't want to make blanket statements, but I think many of the universities in USA, like they expect research to be done at very high level. You are expected to like produce research papers that get published to like top conferences. Uh, you are expected to do a lot of implementation on like real robots, like real hardware. So yeah, I think it really depends on like professor to professor, but a lot of so I'm sure like there are a lot of like professors, for example, in IIT-Madras who expect very high quality of research, but in general in USA as well, like the quality of research is expected to be very high. So you have to come up with interesting ideas and like publish in like top conferences and yeah.